Pro Football Playbook, presented by the Pigskin Podcast Network. Your source for team news, draft needs, player profiles and rankings, full Senior Bowl, Combine, and NFL draft coverage. News, analysis, discussion. It's in the playbook. Now, here is your host, sports journalist Bill Alvstad, and featured analyst Keith Myers. Hey, welcome into the Pro Football Playbook Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down as usual with my co-host, Mr. Keith Myers. Keith, hey.
How's it going, Bill? You ready to talk some playoff picture and everything that's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. This will be a great show, fun show this week. Get you all caught up on where the conference standings currently are. And I thought we'd just have some fun today, both of us, by ranking all of those teams that are currently in the playoff hunt. We'll leave the teams that are kind of looking from the outside in currently, but still have an opportunity. That's another day for them. Today, we're going to focus on who's in and kind of put those in some semblance of an order. I did my order and spent a little bit of time on it, as in I wrote a list, and you spent slightly more time than I did. You put that list in some semblance of some order, and so we do have some differences, which is awesome, and will make the show slightly entertaining in the second half as we move forward. And just a reminder as well, as we transition from the regular season coming to an end here in the next couple of weeks, the show will also transition a little bit as we move forward. We're doing, at a minimum, 2 shows a week, most of the time 3 shows a week. 2 of those shows are going to be focused primarily on the NFL draft. This week coming up, we're going to have a show on offensive tackles, and then we're also sitting down with Denny, the owner of the NFL mock draft database, to go over some current trends and risers and fallers, his consensus mock draft, and kind of take a look at the first round a little bit more closely and follow some of those players that are kind of establishing themselves quickly as featured elements in the first round already. That list is really not moving too much. Same players, different teams sometimes, and so forth. So that's kind of interesting to look at. So let's get started in the AFC and just kind of go through which teams are, in fact, in the playoffs and which teams are kind of outside looking in. Let's start in the AFC East, Keith, where the Buffalo Bills and the Patriots had a great game this last week. The Bills came out on top. Josh Allen, established himself as, as a really nice looking quarterback in that game again, with 3 touchdowns, and the running game really worked against the Patriots. And, the Patriots just kind of struggled a little bit with their rookie quarterback, who looked a little bit like a rookie. Not too many games this year has been that way, but this time it was. Patriots are still sitting at 9-6. They're in the playoffs, but the Bills took command of that division with the same record. But it is interesting to kind of take a look at that and see. I think, the Bills were always going to be the better team. It seemed like this was their division to lose this year, and it's taken this long to kind of figure that out. But
yeah, I mean, the Bills started out hot. They were one of the top teams in the AFC.
2 or 3 teams in the AFC, and they were going to be right there in the discussion for the Super Bowl.
And then they kind of fell apart and really went through a stretch in the middle of the year where they really struggled on both sides of the ball. Just could not put it together. But they've rebounded, and they've won the last couple of weeks. They've looked good doing it. They beat the Patriots. They now own the tiebreaker for the Patriots. So the Bills are in control of that division with 2 really easy games to go, and so they should end up with 11 wins and as the top of that division, and probably the 3 seed in that conference. So
and sitting at currently the 4th seed right now.
Yeah. I'm just saying that's where they likely will end
and
up.
they've got remaining games against the Falcons and the Jets. The Patriots have remaining games against the Jaguars and the Dolphins. Likely now that they're the number 6 seed overall right now. It seems like they're likely to kind of stay in that pocket right now. And that Dolphin game, could be instrumental.
Yeah, because that Dolphin game, I mean, we got to talk about the Dolphins. The Dolphins are in the playoffs as of right now as the 7th seed. There's 3 teams in that in that division. Just like the NFC West, there's 3 teams in that division that are in the playoffs. And the fact that it's the Dolphins is surprising. I mean, they were terrible at the beginning of the year. They were one of the worst teams in the sport. They were talking about, having a top 5 pick and the ability to pick a quarterback because they were going to give up on Tua. They were
Dolphins started the season 1-6, Keith.
Yeah.
And now are 8-7.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a real testament to the just sheer fortitude of the will of that team and the leadership and the quarterback play. Tua's just had been playing really well this year.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't playing great at the start of the year, and then he got hurt, and they really struggled at times. But he's pulled it together. The team's kind of rallied around him. They've got good leadership. I think that you've really liked the roster the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think they built the roster really, really well, I thought.
And so it was weird with that they were as bad as they looked at the beginning of the year. But I think their record now is more indicative of where their talent level is. So it's good to see them continue to progress and make spots. I don't know if they're going to do anything.
I don't know if they're going to keep. I don't know if they're going to keep that 7th seed, Keith. And we'll talk about it as we go through the rankings because they play the Titans and the Patriots.
That's a real tough schedule.
Finish off their year. So we'll see the division tiebreakers, help them a little bit, especially over the Chargers and Baltimore coming up. So we'll see how it goes. The Jets are out. AFC North, the Bengals.
Yeah, the Bengals are the team.
And the Ravens had a great game this week. There was some talk earlier in the week about the idea of the Bengals quarterback not having a gold jacket quite yet, and he had pretty much taken care of them in the second half of their first game. Scoring 3 touchdowns. In the second half of the first matchup, and they came out victorious. And the Bengals went in, and Joe Burrow had just a historic day.
And a monster day.
Over 500 yards passing, 4 touchdowns or whatever, 4 or 5. It was just crazy. And it just really kind of took that division, really, which is a great thing. If you've been following the Bengals for a long, long time, it's about time, right? Like Joe Burrow came back from that devastating knee injury this year and has just put together a really nice season, and to have him really close out like he's doing right now is a testament to that team and the idea that they could possibly do some damage in the playoffs.
When was the last time they were genuinely good?
It's been, I don't know, dude.
Carson Palmer era.
Yeah.
Because they had some good defenses when Andy Dalton was their starting quarterback, but the problem was that Andy Dalton was their starting quarterback, and yeah, I think you have to go back to the Carson Palmer days. I will say that the Ravens they're a mess. They're outside the playoffs. They could get themselves back in, but they're currently 4 in a row.
The 10th seed right now in the AFC standings, so they're. And that's with an 8-7 record. It's not like they have a losing record. They could go on and win the last remaining games against the Rams and the Steelers. It seems somewhat unlikely because the Rams really want to win, and the Steelers want to show in that division that they're, they still care. So it's going to be a tough go for the Ravens. And like you said, they're losing. They're trending in the wrong direction, similar to something like the Arizona Cardinal team in the NFC, which is just crazy. Yep. All right, then Pittsburgh is, it looks like they're outside of it. And then the Cleveland Browns are last place in the AFC North. Nobody would have thought that this year, given the what they did last year, what the expectations were. They've just failed to live up to expectations.
Well, and they've had some fairly devastating injuries, and even some minor injuries that have hurt them. I mean, the injury to Baker Mayfield, I know it's his non-throwing shoulder, but you can tell he is struggling to get the ball downfield because of the rotational motion of his body and everything. And he's in a lot of pain, and it's just, he hasn't been the same quarterback this year as last year because of it. And that's really hurt. So they've kind of, for them, this is kind of a, rinse, repeat, let's try it again next year type of situation. But I still think they're trending on a year-to-year basis. They're trending as a good team and not as the Browns. You know what I mean? Like, because the Browns have been kind of the laughingstock since they came back into the league. And I don't believe that's true, because even in this year, which is a down, disappointing year, they're 7-8 and have a chance to finish above 500, just outside the playoffs. And that's a bad year for them. That would have been a fantastic year for any year for the Browns up until last year. Right. So the fact that this is now considered a down year,
it is, and they still have to play the Bengals, and at Pittsburgh as well. So it could be trouble for them this year. Okay, AFC South, the Titans are at the top at 10-5. The Colts are at 9-6. That's definitely the class of the division. The Texans and the Jaguars at the bottom are out of it. The Titans win against the 49ers last Thursday night. They're second in the AFC standings behind the Chiefs. And they've got the head-to-head tiebreaker if needed in hand. The remaining schedule is the Dolphins and the Texans. The Tennessee Titans are going to be, on anybody's list as far as quality teams out of the AFC this year. The Indianapolis Colts, number 5 seed overall after their win against the Arizona Cardinals, and they have the head-to-head tiebreaker over the Patriots as well, face the Raiders and the Jaguars to finish out. So the Indianapolis Colts look like a strong contender to at least possibly do some damage in the playoffs once they get there.
Maybe. They've won 3 straight, and they've done, they've beaten some quality teams.
Nobody likes Carson Wentz, Keith, but all they do is they just keep winning as a team. It's a team sport, and they have a good team.
They've got a good defense. They've got a
good coach,
a great running game, a fantastic offensive line, and quite frankly, one of the better, more underrated coaches in the league. So I like them. I don't know if damage in the playoffs is in their future, but they could win a game. They could upset someone in that first round. And I guess maybe if you want to count that as damage, I don't consider them a contender to go deep into the playoffs.
No.
But yeah, that first weekend, I wouldn't want to play them. They look like they're going to be a tough out because of their ability to run the football, play good defense, and just hopefully avoid costly mistakes. If Wentz can do that, they're gonna be really annoying to whoever they're playing. And as a wild card team, that's.
I mean, and it could be the Patriots, it could be the Bengals, it could be the Titans that they play. I mean, it's that being that 5th seed is going to put you right in the middle of the muck. So, all right, the AFC West, the Chiefs seem to be the dominant class, not only in this division but of all of football. So you've got the Chiefs at 11-4, the Chargers outside looking in currently at 8-7, Raiders, Broncos. That's a great division, and I would have thought maybe one, if not 2 or 3 teams would have emerged out of this division, just like the AFC East. But it's just not happening right now just because of tiebreakers, all that kind of stuff going in.
Well, part of it is that this is a division where they've kind of beat up on each other. This was, for most of the season, the best division in the AFC. And then you've seen the Raiders just fall off, although they've won their last 2, but they've completely fallen off and lost their spot in the playoffs. The Chargers continue to look like a team that could, be a playoff team, maybe win some games in the playoffs, and then they turn around and just can't get off the field defensively and can't stop the run and look terrible the next game. And so they're sitting just outside. And the Broncos too. I mean, they're at 7-8. They're a team that's probably better than I think most people think, but not as good as they want to be, or they think they are. And they're, again, going to be just outside looking in. So it's a good division overall, but probably a division that only gets one team into the playoffs.
Yes, and it's possible that too. I mean, even the Broncos are right now 13th overall, but they're only one game out of the final playoff spot.
Yep.
And you can say that about the Raiders and the Chargers as well. Obviously, a few other teams with those 7-8 to 8-7 records and so forth right now.
Yeah, but Raiders and Chargers are both tied for the last playoff spot, but just lose out because of tiebreakers in this spot, and that will work itself out because the Dolphins have a couple of tough games coming up. So the opening will be there for one of those teams to take it if they choose to. Although the Ravens and Steelers are the other two teams that will be trying to take that spot if the Dolphins give one up. So
you want to take us through the NFC, Keith?
Yeah. So in the NFC, it seems to be a much more clearer picture. Let's start in the East. The Cowboys are there. They're the class of that division at 11-4. The Eagles are currently at 8-7. They look like they're probably going to get in as one of the bottom seeds in the playoffs. And behind them is Washington at 6-9, and the Giants at 4-11. And neither of those teams are good football teams right now. Both of them are on fairly lengthy losing streaks. And so it's really just, it's the Cowboys, and then hopefully the Eagles can sneak in.
It's the Eagles that I'm worried about the most, though, because of their remaining schedule. They play at Washington. They play against the Cowboys in the final game, which ends up being a very, very big game for the Eagles, not so much for the Cowboys. And we'll see how that plays out for the Eagles, because that's not easy. No, that's not easy to do. So we'll see. And as we go through the list, we can find out who else might be contending for that 7th spot. So.
Yeah, I do think that, it's not going to mean much for the Cowboys in terms of getting in. It may mean a lot to the Cowboys in terms of playoff seeding, and so they may want that game, or they may not, depending on what happens between now and then. So if we move to the North, you've got the Packers at 12-3. They're currently the number 1 seed in the NFC. They've won 4 straight. Their defense looks solid. And then, offense, is good with Aaron Rodgers. And behind them, it's a lot of, the Vikings are technically still in the hunt at 7-8, but they're not going anywhere, even if they make it. They're going to be a very quick out. The Bears at 5-10, the Lions at 12-1 are, at this point looking at their draft pick status, because they're not good teams at all. It's really just still kind of a one-team division, and the Vikings are hoping to make a go of it, but they need help. They need help to get in. And so, it really comes down to the Packers and
the remaining schedule of Packers and Bears for the Minnesota Vikings as well.
Yeah, and so it comes down to that, for the Packers, win your last 2, and you're the number 1 seed. And that's kind of what they're looking at, or they're looking at the Cowboys and going, hey, if the Cowboys drop one, then the Packers get the number 1 seed just outright, and maybe they can rest some people at the end. But they're kind of in that in that penthouse looking down at everybody.
Exactly.
And they've got it easy. In the South, you've got Tampa at 11-4 that. At one point, everyone would have considered them, if not the favorite to come out of the NFC, at least, a favorite to make it to the NFC title game. But they've run into some fairly rough injuries here the last couple of weeks. And they still won this last week, but they feel like a diminished version of an 11-4 team.
Yeah.
but they're also the only team in that division that's likely to make the playoffs because
they're the number 4 seed right now overall,
Mhm.
but they've got games against the Jets and the Panthers to finish out the season. So the likelihood that they're going to get to 13 is pretty high,
yeah.
and keep that 4th seed at a minimum and possibly move up a little bit depending on what Dallas does, depending on what the Green Bay Packers end up doing.
And what happens in the NFC West too. But behind them is the Falcons at 7-8, the Saints at 7-8, who are a better team roster than their record, but they don't have a quarterback. That's just that whole quarterback situation has been kind of a mess for them. And the Panthers at 5-10 are in desperate need of a quarterback themselves, as that team's completely fallen apart. Remember, they were 3-0 at the start of the year, and now they're 5-10. Right? They just continue to lose games. They've lost 5 straight. So, it's really kind of Tampa and everybody else in that division, just like the North is the Packers and everyone else. And then you've got the NFC West, which is kind of the opposite of that, where you've got it's like the AFC East, where you've got 3 teams currently sitting in the playoffs. You've got the Rams at 11-4. They are definitely the team trending upward. They've overtaken the Cardinals. They've looked really solid doing it. They look like a team that's probably going to make a deep run into the playoffs once they get there. They're currently looking at a situation where they are looking at, hey, can we catch the Packers for that 1 seed and the bye? Behind
they would be one of the few teams that actually really maybe have a chance to do that with the games remaining against the Ravens and the 49ers.
Mm-hmm. I mean, those aren't easy games. I mean, the Ravens and 49ers are both decent teams. I mean, they're not.
When you look at those matchups, though, they do favor the Rams.
The Rams are going to be favored in both those games, and they should be. They're the better team, but it's not like they're playing, the Jets and the Jaguars, right? You could definitely have an easier schedule than what the Rams have, but they have the ability to catch the Packers if they get a little help, and so they're going to be one of the teams that's looking, at that spot and going for it. The Cardinals, on the other hand, are 10-5. You're looking, okay, so they look like record wise they're one of the better teams. They're have a shot to overtake the Rams still, but they've lost 3 straight and they've looked absolutely awful doing it. The wheels have completely come off that.
They even went into the playoffs because another team helped them. This week, it's like they didn't really, they lost, but they still got into the playoffs.
Yeah, they clinched without winning. Right. And they're just sliding. This is the second year in a row where they have started out really hot and then fallen apart. Luckily for them, this year they decided to fall apart late enough in the year that they're still going to get into the playoffs, unlike last year. But
it'll be interesting to watch their last 2 games too, because you really want these guys. If you're a Cardinals fan, you want this team to respond to this fall and rebound. Like, this is a good game against a good Cowboys team at the Cowboys this weekend. You've got to go in there and win this game because of pride. You want to go in with some momentum into the playoffs. Your last game at home against the Seahawks, you want to just completely decimate the Seahawks team. They're completely fallen. The Seahawks sit at 5-10. You want to ensure that you completely trounce that team. Now, it used to be a game where you might have it on your schedule that you could sit players and rest. Now you need to go in and win that game convincingly so that you can have something into the playoffs where your team is confident and going in an upward trajectory. Right now you're not, and you don't want to limp into the playoffs losing one of your last 2 games, maybe one of those completely unconvincingly skate by and then be one and done in the playoffs. Your entire coaching staff would be susceptible at that point to being jettisoned and starting over.
Losing one of your last 2 games would mean losing 4 of your last 5 games.
Yes.
Because they've lost 3 in a row. And so they're in a situation where, I mean, they were 10-2. They were the number 1 overall seed.
There was no question who the best team in the NFC was. It was Arizona, and then there was everyone else.
Yeah. And That's absolutely not the case. And I mean, I never thought that they were head and shoulders above anyone. Like we've had this conversation multiple times.
Many times. Yeah.
I always considered them, more of a second tier team, even when they were 10-2. I thought they were. I always thought the Rams were a bit more talented team, and I thought the Packers were a better team. But the Cardinals were winning, and they were winning in the right way, and they were just.
And Kyler Murray looked outstanding.
Yeah, he was an MVP candidate, and they were and so I was sitting there going, I have this opinion, but I could easily be wrong. And they've unfortunately decided to prove me right here at the end of the season. And honestly, I like Kyler Murray enough. I'm sad to see them prove me right. I wanted the Cardinals to be better than my internal voices told me.
What if the Cardinals went to the Cowboys, had a statement game against a Cowboys team that definitely wants to win this game? Cardinals come out on top on the road in a kind of a statement end of the year kind of game, and then do what they need to do against the Seahawks. Does that change your idea of what this team could be in the playoffs?
I don't know.
Because you've been a guy that's been on the fence for not just this year, in previous years, with this regime, with this quarterback,
I really
with the talent around the roster building process with them.
It's not the quarterback. I like Kyler Murray. I think he is,
and I like the way that they built the roster.
And I think they've got some talent on all over the roster. They've got some nice things going on there. My problem is entirely with the coaching staff. I don't think that is a quality NFL coaching staff, and I think the fact that the wheels have fallen off, mid-season 2 years in a row. And they're not living up to their talent level is an indictment of the coaching staff. And there is a bias there on my part, simply because I really hated the hire when it happened. And I'm slow to give them credit when they do good things. But, then things like this happen, and I have a hard time saying that I shouldn't. I mean, they're just not. It's not a good coaching staff, and it's not a great team. If they do come out and beat the Cowboys, they beat the Seahawks, that'll put them at 12-5, but they're still not going to win the division because the Rams hold the tiebreakers, and so the Rams will still win the division. The Cardinals are still looking at 3 road games to try and get anywhere. And they just have not played well in the second half of the season to have me think that they're going to be able to maintain any kind of level of excellence the same way they did against, in this theoretical standpoint against Dallas, when they haven't been able to play well against lesser teams. So, I mean, they got trounced by the Lions in this slide. So does one game against a good team like the Cowboys change your mind after watching, them get beat by bad teams the previous few weeks? And it's not like they haven't been healthy. They got all their guys healthy. And then they fell apart. So that's what the worrisome part for me. So we haven't talked about the 49ers yet. They're 8-7. They're currently the 7th seed, aren't they? Or no, they're the
5th seed currently.
No, they're the 6th seed. Because the Cardinals are the 5.
That's correct.
So yeah, but they're sitting in a situation they'll probably make it in. That loss this week did not help them, but they could be bumped. They're one of the team. They're the team that could be bumped out. They're at that spot. But then you start looking at who's going to pass them, right? The Eagles might.
You think
but
about
the Eagles
Jimmy
are
Garoppolo situation with the 49ers.
The 49ers, I believe, have misplayed that.
I do too, but what I'm talking about specifically now is the injury to Jimmy Garoppolo, and it looks like he's not going to be able to go.
Yeah.
So
is that a good thing or a bad thing for the team?
Well, it would have been a good thing had Trey Lance been had some snaps this year and been ready for this moment. Now we don't know.
Yeah, I think that I think that the Jimmy Garoppolo injury hurts San Francisco's playoff aspirations because of the fact that Trey Lance wasn't prepped. He wasn't given enough snaps. He wasn't given that opportunity. And the 49ers went with the lesser player because they're trying to win now, get into the playoffs now. But long term, they needed to have been playing Lance. There were a couple of different points in the season where making a transition to Trey Lance, long term was the right move, and they chose not to do it. And it's paid off a little bit in the short term.
Yeah, if you really look at it though, too, they're nearly a 500 team. They're 8-7. They're one loss away from being 500. You can't be 500 in the NFL right now based on the 17-game schedule, but they're as close to a 500 team as you can get with Jimmy Garoppolo, the guy that they thought could get them into the playoffs and be a sure thing to do that. Now is, borderline a questionable situation all year long based on the idea that Trey Lance was going to be your future anyway. So now you've wasted an entire year possibly of development on maybe or maybe not getting in the playoffs. You're certainly not going to do a lot of damage once you get there with the roster you currently have. So now it's the worst case scenario. Jimmy Garoppolo's played all year. Now he's not going to, it looks like. Trey Lance has got to come in and be the magician without any tricks in his bag because he hasn't had any time to develop them.
Yeah, and they're going to go into next season instead of having Trey Lance going into year 2, having a year under his belt. They're going to go into next season with him essentially as a rookie because he hasn't played. Now, granted, if he gets to play these last 2 games, he can self-scout it a little bit during the offseason and watch his own tape. There is something to be gained that will help him going forward. But like I said, I think they've misplayed the situation. I think that they needed to have made this transition because they're not a good enough team to sacrifice the future a little bit in order to try and make a run now, because they were never going to do anything once they got there. The roster is just not good enough.
You and I and everyone else knew that. Yep. Okay, so let's rank these teams now. We know everyone that's in the playoffs. We just listed all of them. Let's kind of put these guys in some semblance of a list, and we'll just kind of go through the list, and when we have differences, let's stop and talk about it briefly.
No, we're going to stop and talk about it at the very first name.
I've got the Green Bay Packers at the top.
You do. I thought you had the Chiefs at the top. I also have the Packers at the top. I think
I have the Packers at the top, but there is a question mark on it, and the question mark is they are only plus 59 point differential.
True.
At that record, which is remarkable. That means that you have a lot of stuff going your way, a lot of balls bounce your way, a lot of calls, a lot of all that kind of stuff to get to 12 wins already and likely finish out with 14. Like you'll be 14-3 with a point differential of under probably 70, which is remarkable for any season. And it's I don't know. So we'll see.
It also means they got thumped a little bit in their losses, which you never want to see. But at the same time, like I'm not really that concerned about.
Are they the class of? They're the class of the NFL. Regardless,
they're the class of the NFC, no matter what.
Okay, but we're making an NFL list.
The class of the I don't want to say that they're the class of the NFL because the number 2 team is right there with them.
I've got Kansas City at number 2.
Kansas City is number 2.
Now, Kansas City, if you take a look at Kansas City after the first 7 weeks, Heath, they
3-4
wouldn't even be making the playoffs at 3-4, and then they've literally gone.
They haven't
on
lost.
a 8-win streak.
And they've been getting better. They've been getting better through the win streak.
As a defense.
Yeah, the defense went from being awful to
being Patrick Mahomes had some questionable games in that stretch, that run.
But he
didn't carry the team. He didn't have to carry the team. Tyreek Hill still did his thing, et cetera. But that defense really kind of stepped up and made that team more balanced this year, which is scary in the playoffs.
That's a team that needs, they need another receiver. They need someone Kelsey at tight end is that guy, but they really need someone on the opposite side of the field to take some of the pressure off Hill, because Hill is, the passing offense is so dependent on him that just getting one, getting a little pressure off of him, I think would make that offense just even scarier than it already is. Okay, so after the Chiefs.
Yeah, so this is kind of where the list kind of gets squishy because there's a whole bunch of teams I think that could really fit this, the next four on the list. But I've got the Buccaneers at number 3.
See, I don't. I have the Rams at number 3.
That's interesting.
The Rams are, remember, this is a power ranking, so it's not just the record or any of that. It's it's where they're going. The Rams are trending up. They're starting to put it together after kind of a mid-season, swoon in the middle. But the Rams are looking very good, and so I've got them there. I think
same records, 11-4. Point differential for the Rams is 90 to 130 for the Bucs.
But the Bucs also have now have some pretty major, massive injuries on the offensive side of the ball, including Fournette, the running back, is out, and Evans and Godwin are hurt, and they're in a situation where. Yeah, they're 11-4, and they've looked really good getting to 11-4.
But they're matchup dependent now. As they move forward, they're going to close out the season with the Jets and the Panthers. But when it comes to the playoffs, they will face the number 7 seed likely, or number 5th seed or 6th seed in the playoffs in the first game.
Yeah,
so we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah,
that could end up being the Rams.
No.
Yeah.
No, because the Rams aren't going to lose 2 in a row and have Arizona. The
Rams might be the 4th seed, depending on how it all shakes out with the Cowboys and Green Bay and so forth. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess I don't. The Rams at the 4th seed remember the division winners all play wild card teams, and so the Bucs won't be playing the Rams in the first round. That would be the second round. They're all going to play the wild card teams. Sure. There's no way that Arizona is passing the Rams at this point. The
Arizona Cardinal Buck playoff game would be very entertaining.
It would be interesting. It would be interesting because you've got the Bucs, which are a well-coached, good team, but really injured and going to struggle, versus an Arizona team that is very talented but poorly coached, and relatively healthy. And so we'll see: is it the health or the coaching that overcomes, in there? So that would be entertaining in a lot of ways.
Okay, so the Bucs and then the Cowboys at number 4.
I also have the Cowboys at 4.
Okay, and then I had the Rams at 5. You have the Bucs at 5, I presume.
I do.
Okay, so just kind of flip those.
If you go, if you look through there, right, in the top 5 teams, we have one AFC team.
That seems about right to me.
It does, because
even though the AFC has been consistently, middle of the road teams, slightly above middle of the road, there's a bunch of them in the AFC.
There's a bunch of above average
some good teams at the top.
Yep. Yeah. In the NFC, you've got the 4 division winners and Arizona that have looked like really good teams. And are there any, other than the Chiefs now, have there been any really good teams in the AFC? At times, Tennessee looked like it.
Yeah.
Early in the season, the Bills, but no. The NFC's got the top end. AFC is in the middle, and then the NFC's got a bunch of teams in the bottom too. So
my 6th overall ranking though is the Bills.
See, I went with the Bengals.
Yeah, that to me is interesting. That because I have the Bengals considerably further down my list.
I know you do,
but I would certainly move those guys up the way that Joe Burrow has that team playing right now,
and that's why they're trending in the right direction. I like the way they're playing. I like their defense does it. Joe Burrow has been fantastic.
He has shown a chip on his shoulder this year that I didn't know that he had, where he's willing to put that team on his back and fight for victories and fight against teams that are kind of coming out against him. And that's shown me a lot, but I want to see more. I'm not quite ready to anoint them that high up yet, I mean, if that were the case, that would have been my second best team in the AFC.
Yeah.
And I'm not quite there yet with them.
See, that's why I've got them there. It's because I
still think Josh Allen and the Bills are worthy of that spot.
See, I have Josh Allen and the Bills one spot below. And it's because they had that they everything was rough for them for a while. And they've kind of started to come out of it. They had that convincing win over New England. But I need to see more. I need to see that this is not that wasn't a 1 week like, oh yeah, we're gonna take it to our division rival, and that they can actually string together some good quality play, because they haven't done it in a while. And so I want to see them do it again. Now they may end up above the Bengals, by the end of the season in terms of my power rankings, if they can string together a couple more good wins. But they just haven't done it in a while. So I want to see them do it again. Whereas I think the Bengals have played consistently good for a while.
Here's another difference that we're going to have is my next team at number 7 overall is the Cardinals, followed by the number 8 team overall, the Titans. And I think you probably have that reversed at some
I have
level.
I have the Titans beneath the Bills.
Yeah.
And
that makes sense.
Me, the Cardinals are down. They're not even in this part of the list.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so the Titans, I agree with you there. The Patriots at 9.
Yep.
And then I have the Bengals at 10.
And see, I am bringing the Colts in at that point.
Yeah, and I have the Colts at 11.
And then I have the Cardinals after the Colts.
Yeah. See, I've got the Cardinals still up at 7, but I'm barely. And the reason that I put them up there was the reason that I talked about when we talked about them in the segment with the NFC West, is that I do expect them to go into the Cowboys and win. If they're a team that expects to do anything in the playoffs, if they're a team that sees themselves the way that they started this season, even though they don't have Hopkins right now, they should be able to go in and take care of business and win. And I expect them to. And if they do, I think that they belong higher on this list. And so I want to see that.
If they do, they might belong higher on the list. But this is the same team that just got trounced by the Lions a week ago. And you can't tell me that a team that just gets clobbered by one of the worst teams in the NFL, maybe the worst team in the NFL, deserves to be higher on that list, especially as a team that's lost 3 games in a row. They're not. Yeah,
I'm not going to take anything away from the Lions in that game. If you watched that game, and I think you probably watched a little bit of it,
I did.
The Lions looked like the better team that day. Yeah, and I'm not going to take anything away from them. They beat the Cardinals.
You're right. They did. They looked like the better team, which to me says a lot about the Cardinals.
It does say a lot about the Cardinals, but it also tells me about the heart of the Lion team as well. And I'm going to leave it there. Okay. So the Patriots at 9. I don't want to gloss over that. It led by a rookie quarterback, Bill Belichick's team. I think it shows the value of coaching, the value of what Bill Belichick does. I think that's written all over this Patriot team this year, because I don't think the roster is that great, and they're performing at a nice level.
I think that people got a little in front of themselves with the Patriots when they went on that winning streak and overtook the Bills there for a second. But they played a lot of really bad teams in that stretch. And now that they're playing better, when they play better teams, you kind of see where they really are. They're a team that is significantly better than last year. They've got some pieces in place, but they're a team they began a rebuilding process. And then we're winning, and everyone's like, they're great. I think the roster is not where it needs to be to continue to be a force in the playoffs, but they deserve to make the playoffs with the way they played this year. And I was not a fan of, their draft pick at quarterback. And I thought of the five quarterbacks, he was the most likely to flop. He had the highest floor, but the lowest ceiling. And I saw him more of like an Andy Dalton type. And he has proven me wrong for the most part. He has been makes quick decisions, gets the ball out of his hand, has some good accuracy. He's actually shown me more this year than I expected him to. I've been really impressed. So that's why I've got the Patriots higher, just below the Titans and above the Colts.
Yeah. And I had the Bengals thrown in there too. And I don't want to diminish that because we kind of lost them when we started talking about the Cardinals and so forth. But the Bengals, you had higher. You had them at, Joe Burrow and company at what, number 7 behind the Bills?
6 ahead of the Bills, right?
6 ahead of the Bills. So that's significant. Yeah. I mean, that really is a significant kind of list for you to be able to put that team up that high.
Yeah. I mean, like, these are power rankings, right? So it's how are they playing right now? And that's not just, it's more than just their record, and it's how are they playing right now? And I just think that the Bengals are and have been playing really good football this year.
Yeah.
I do still believe they're a year away. I think next year is the year where they come out and take the league in the AFC by force and push themselves up into the upper echelon, but they are ahead of schedule. And I like what I'm seeing from them. Whereas the Bills, I think, are the better, more talented team, but they haven't played well recently, except for
the Bills and the Titans kind of in the same boat.
Yeah. The Titans, have, again, same idea. So anyways, that's why I have them, Bengals, Bills, Pats, or Bengals, Bills, Titans, Pats, Colts, a group of all AFC teams in there after, that group of NFC teams.
So the one we didn't talk about too much is the Colts. We can talk about them if you'd like to. And then the list for me finishes out 49ers, Eagles, Dolphins. And again, we're ranking the playoff teams here.
Yep. And so for me, and I've got, after the Colts, that's where I finally slotted the Cardinals.
Wow.
Because I mean, look at where they've
just lost. Ahead of the 49ers. I presume on your list somewhere in there.
And it's 49ers, Eagles, Dolphins as the bottom 3, same as you. So, but yeah, just ahead of the 49ers. You cannot have watched the last 3 weeks and thought that the Cardinals were a good team.
Yeah, no, you're right. In the way that we traditionally do these power rankings, you're right. That's kind of where they fit. I did it in a way that I've romanticized at the beginning of the year and thought about the Cardinals' opportunity to right the ship before they get in the playoffs and what they could do in the playoffs as a roster, as a team. That's kind of why I put the Cardinals higher. But you're right. Currently, the way that they're playing, they do belong closer to the bottom of this list.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can tell by our discussion here that I weight when we do these power rankings, I weight the more recent games higher, and the early season stuff lower. That's why the Bills were lower than the Bengals, is because the Bills looked great at the beginning of the year, but then they fell off. The Cardinals are low because they looked amazing at the beginning of the year, but they've looked awful in recent weeks, just awful. And so, yeah, they just don't long to be down there. Honestly, in that same idea, I feel like maybe the Dolphins deserve to be higher than the 14th out of the 14th spot, because they've won a bunch of games in a row and have looked pretty good. I guess I'm still not sold.
The Dolphins started 1-6, Keith.
Yeah. And they probably should be higher, maybe above the Eagles and the 49ers in terms of this. But I still have them down there because I still expect them to lose their next 2 and end up falling back out of the playoffs, which is unfortunate for them, because I think what they've done in order to win 6 in a row and get back to 7-6 is a phenomenal achievement. So they deserve a lot of credit for being good.
What do you think of the Eagles? God, do you think they're going to be able to hold on? You know, because
who's going to pass them? They've got they've got games. They got a game against Washington, which they should win,
and the Cowboys. I mean, so they could go 500 in their last couple of games, and they may, depending on how things wash out with the Saints and so forth, they may not make it. But now they're the 7th seed. But there's no guarantee.
Someone's got to pass them, and you've got 3 teams with the Falcons, the Saints, and the Vikings, who technically could pass them, but I have zero faith in any of those 3 teams to go 2-0. And
nobody thought that the Eagles would be a better than 500 team this year. Jalen Hurts, they're 8-7. They've got a nice point differential of plus 80. The Cowboys above them at 11-4 are sitting at 150 point differential. Clearly the class act of the division.
Oh, absolutely.
The Eagles are definitely ahead of schedule. I think they've been pleasantly surprised by the play of Jalen Hurts to the point where they may not even be looking for a quarterback this offseason. Truly, a guy to come in and start. Now they could be looking for that franchise guy, and Jalen Hurts could be part of a package that was sent out to help them get to the next level, to compete against Dak and the Cowboys, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, Jalen Hurts is a guy who's limited as a thrower, but he brings so much. He brings so much to the team as a runner and as a leader and all those kind of things. There's a lot to like with him, but also you need to recognize that you're probably not winning a Super Bowl with him. And so they're in a tough spot. He's good enough to get them to where they are, which is slightly above 500 and a chance to get into the playoffs and all of that, but he's not good enough to win you a Super Bowl. And so I think they're going to look at their options, and building around Jalen Hurts is probably plan B, and plan A is going to be to turn that tremendous draft capital that they have. I believe they have 3 first-round picks, into a guy like Aaron Rodgers or if he's available, Russell Wilson, or, one of those veteran guys that people keep talking about, because if they could, trade those 3 first rounders and Hurts and get a, Pro Bowl caliber veteran quarterback, I think they'll do it, because that would make them a Super Bowl contender, whereas they wouldn't be with Hurts. So
interesting.
It's a possibility.
All right. So that was kind of a fun list. And we both kind of varied a little bit in there. I think yours probably made more sense. You spent a little bit more time thinking about it. I honestly didn't, and I should have. So there's that. So we've ran long today, so let's get out of here.
Let's get out of here.
Find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. I'm at Alvstad NFL. The show is at PF_Playbook. You can find us at Pro Football Playbook.co. as our website, and you can find us on your favorite podcast platforms. Subscribe there, as well as our YouTube channel, Pro Football Playbook, and make sure you subscribe. We could use all the subscribers we could get, and that way you don't miss the show. And we're putting out 2 to 3 every week, all the way through the NFL draft. So until next time, we'll see you. Bye. Bye. Thanks for listening to the Pro Football Playbook Podcast. Follow Keith at Myers NFL. Bill is at Alvstad NFL. The show is at PF_Playbook. Listen and subscribe on your favorite podcast app or YouTube, and at our website, ProFootballPlaybook.co.